CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. The cascading part refers to a complex algorithm that's used to determine what CSS styles are applied to a particular HTML document. We'll come back to the cascading algorithm later in another lesson. By now, you already know that CSS is used to control the visual design and layout of an HTML page. This includes the width and height of elements, borders, colors, margins, fonts, font sizes, alignments, positioning, and much more. The need for an additional language to control the design of a web page was seen early on in the web's creation. HTML was never intended to be used for this. Its creators believed from the start there should be a separation of concerns between the content and structure of a web page versus the visual style and layout. It took several years and many different competing implementations battling it out for acceptance as an industry standard, but in the end, the implementation known as CSS won out. In 1996, the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, released an official recommendation for CSS1. And in 1997, the W3C CSS Working Group was formed to oversee CSS standards. The current implementation is CSS3. Let's take a look at the syntax of CSS. We're going to define these terms: CSS rule set or rule, selector, declaration block, declaration, property name or property, and property value or value for short. This is an example of a CSS rule set, or it can just be called a CSS rule. It contains a CSS selector and a declaration block. In this example, the CSS selector is P, which refers to the paragraph element. A selector is a condition that specifies which part of an HTML document the following rule set will apply to. Any HTML element can be used as a CSS selector. There are other kinds of selectors which we'll discuss later. The selector is followed by a space, then a set of curly braces. The curly braces and their contents comprise the declaration block. Inside the curly braces goes one or more CSS declaration, and each declaration should go on its own line. In this example, there's only one declaration, but there can be more. CSS declarations are made up of two parts: a property name and a property value, which can also be called property and value for short. The property and the value are separated by a colon, and each declaration ends with a semicolon. The ending curly brace should go on its own line at the very end. Now that you understand more about what CSS is and the structure of its syntax, in the following lesson you will learn about how to use it in an HTML page.